especially through the morning, but they should be fading, as should the showers over the Northern Isles. Staying quite breezy here, but elsewhere, light winds, some sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant after that chilly start, 14 to 18 degrees. Now, it is going to turn cloudier in the west, and come the afternoon, rain is going to push into Northern Ireland. That's going to get heavier overnight, and then in these western areas of Wales, Northern Ireland, and parts of Scotland, we are looking at heavy and persistent rain through Sunday that could cause some problems, the potential for some flooding. It turns windy everywhere, although many central and eastern areas will stay dry and bright. That wind coming from the south, so bringing milder air, so temperatures more widely on Sunday into the high teens or low 20s.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, team. It's 8 o'clock and I'm Laurence Fox. Coming up on the show this evening, I'll be discussing the case of patient ST, or human being Sidishka Thrumilesh, as she may and must rightly be remembered from now on. We will also be talking about the furore around Russell Brand allegations. I will also be asking my wonderful panel, was Rishi Sunak right to U-turn on net zero? Has going to school become an optional extra for kids? And are footpaths racist? Of course they are. Plus, I'll be getting all your reaction to tonight's topics, and of course, you will be putting me on the spot again. That's all coming up after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Laurence, thank you. Well, the top story tonight is that the Home Office has been ordered to stop construction work on a former RAF base that was set to house asylum seekers. West Lindsey District Council in Lincolnshire served an enforcement and stop notice saying it was clear there'd been a breach of planning control. The government planned to house up to 2,000 people at RAF Scampton. In other news today, Labour says all major budget decisions would be checked by the Office for Budget Responsibility if it gets into government. Sir Keir Starmer said it'll ensure what he calls the mistakes of Liz Truss's so-called mini-budget leading to high prices aren't repeated. The government says the former Prime Minister's budget wasn't to blame for higher prices, but the Labour leader says this plan will bring stability to Britain's economy.
A year ago, huge damage was done to our economy and people are still paying the price. That can never be allowed to happen again. So this is a pragmatic, sensible measure. Already other people are coming out, former permanent secretaries, leading economists saying this is a good idea for the stability of our economy. But this is focused on working people and the pain that they've been through because of that disastrous mini-budget just a year ago.
Now, as you've been hearing, a judge has ruled that a 19-year-old woman who died after losing a legal battle with an NHS trust can now be named. Sadiksha Tirumalish, who had a rare mitochondrial disorder, wanted to travel to North America for a potential clinical trial. However, the unnamed NHS trust had a fundamental disagreement with the teenager's family over what was in her best interests. During the hearing, the Court of Protection heard that Miss Tirumalish told her psychiatrist, "I want to die trying to live." Her family said she was one of a kind.
After a year of struggle and heartache, we can finally say our beautiful daughter and sister's name in public without fear. She is Sadiksha. She is Sadiksha Tirumalish, not ST. Despite our grief and the continuing shock over everything we have been through, today a part of us is at peace. Sadiksha was a wonderful daughter and sister who we will cherish forever.
The government's refused whether to confirm that HS2 will connect central London with Manchester. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says no decisions have been made, but suggested costs are getting out of control. Under-Secretary for Transport, Richard Holden, said work on the project is underway.
What we've already got at the moment with HS2 is spades in the ground right across the country. Billions of pounds have been invested in HS2 in that first route up to Birmingham. We've got tens of thousands of people working on the project, really opening up deprived parts of North London and parts of central Birmingham. If you go there, you can see the transformational effect that it is happening. But it's right also that the government ensures that all of these big projects are looked at properly in the round and that costs are kept under control.
You're with GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on digital radio and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
There was a bite in the air this London morning as the autumn sun did its best to warm the quiet streets. Crossing the threshold into the Royal Courts of Justice and on towards the dubiously named Court of Protection, protecting who exactly? That bite inside the cavernous and imposing Central Hall became positively Arctic. Far off, in the distance, stood a family huddled together like lost children in a giant's playroom, stooped in grief, awaiting an appeal for their right to speak their beautiful daughter's words in public for the first time. I want everyone to know. I want everyone to know what is happening. These are the words of their daughter, Sadiksha Tirumalish. For those who haven't heard, Sadiksha was put on a pathway to death by her doctors, despite being assessed as fully conscious and sentient by two separate psychiatrists, dragged, weak, and in the last precious moments of life, into legal proceedings by her local NHS trust, hell-bent on finishing her off as soon as possible. The judge sided with the trust, saying that she was clearly delusional because she inconveniently insisted that she wanted to die trying to live. In addition to this horror, the imposition of an Orwellian transparency order, correctly defined as a gagging order, meant that a family who should have been home with their loved ones mourning the loss of their daughter were instead in this cold, austere building for one last chance to remove the gag wrapped suffocatingly around their mouths and the mouths of how many other families on a blanket basis to protect our NHS. The reasoning for this order was ostensibly to stop harassment of any clinicians involved, despite none having aired any concerns directly, but more obviously it exists to protect the NHS from real scrutiny and genuine accountability. I must confess, as I saw the NHS Trust's not insignificantly small legal team shuffle into court, one could be forgiven for asking, in a time of such great financial need in the health service, how much this affair had cost the taxpayer from start to finish, and why they are still trying to silence Sadushka, even as the poor girl lies dead and gone, and why a serenely dignified yet broken mother is weeping once again before a cold and clinical courtroom for the most fundamental of freedoms. First, denied the freedom for a chance at more life, and now denied the freedom to speak about it. Unnecessary, evil, and profoundly cruel. After submissions from both sides and from the press about the damage done to trust when such draconian reporting restrictions are placed upon families, the judge ruled that they could finally say their own daughter's name, Yippee. There are other aspects to this case I'm sure will come to light in time, which may well reveal the more sinister reasons why the NHS Trust fought so hard to silence the family. But guess what? They're subject to a transparency order as well. We live in a post-Christian world. Dwindling congregations of followers search for dwindling places of worship. So many have turned their back on God only to prostrate themselves at the feet of the diversity demons. This is nothing new, but even the ethical standards of Judeo-Christian societies are fast disappearing and becoming ever fainter echoes of a time when life was more precious and more outwardly meaningful, rooted in duty and courage rather than succumbing to the unending modern inward reflections of narcissistic personal identity. The courts are woefully unequipped to deal with society's rudderless morality, devoid of even the shadows of a higher authority falling upon the fallen, choosing instead to impose lock and key restrictions on reporting in the family court and the court of protection. One wonders, well, I don't actually, how many more families and parents are silenced and superseded by judges in the name of protection. What other evils, and no, that isn't too strong a word, are muffled and blanketed by unchecked and nihilistic paternalism? In this inverted world, where free speech is under threat like never before, and cases are tried and sentenced in the media, where due process is flung out with the trash aided by sneaking party members and their billet doux to cancellation, in the courts, silence reigns. Perhaps it might be time for us to reflect on how quickly the foundations of society are crumbling beneath us like cheap concrete, and what, if anything, we would like to do about it. Should we be asking ourselves whether we want to be a nation attached to a failing health service, or whether we wish to be a nation with a functioning health service attached to it? Should we be asking ourselves whether justice muted in the secret dark is any justice at all? Sadishka's brave family have put this round of egregious wrongs right, but more secret battles lie ahead for them. We can only hope that they finally have the beginnings of closure, to mourn their beautiful daughter openly, to share photos of her last birthday in hospital, treasured memories, finally released from the locked box of man's imperfect justice, time to organise a funeral, to say goodbye, instead of being terrified of breaking the laughably titled transparency order for doing so. Time and time again, throughout the hearing, came the voice of a broken family speaking as one. As all too often happens in cases of such extreme circumstance, it is the same cry. May what we have suffered and what we have been put through never, ever happen to another family again. And I will leave you with the words of Sadishka's brother, Varshan, his shaking hands clenched tightly around the family statement as he composed himself to say, "We are deeply concerned how we have been treated by the hospital trust and the courts. We have been gagged silenced, and most importantly, prevented from accessing specialist treatment abroad. We did not look for this fight. This fight came to us from a system that too readily gives up on life. We were brutally silenced, intimidated, and taken to court in our hour of need. So, joining us this evening are Dr. Malcolm Kendrick and Paul Huxley from Christian Concern. Dr. Kendrick, have I been too brutal in my verdict there?
Well, I think, it's obviously these are highly emotive areas, and they're difficult to get right. I know I've been involved in dealing mainly with elderly patients who are reaching the end of their lives, and quite often you have to make harsh decisions, hopefully in the best interests of the patient. I think that, I don't know why there was a transparency order, or some people call it a gagging order here, but I do know that in Liverpool, when we had another child with mitochondrial dysfunction, that there was an awful lot of aggression towards the doctors in the trust, and they were in fact quite often insulted, and I believe one of them may have been physically attacked. So I think that whilst these things sound harsh, the emotions run so high. And I do think we can't just see it as, if you like, the doctors are not involved, are not horrible people trying to wipe people out. I think that is, they're often very concerned about what they're doing, and they are all very concerned about what they're doing. And the courts are listening to both sides of this thing. And I think that we need to try not to make it a battle of us versus them, the evil NHS versus good, or whatever, however this is presented, because it really, having been in these situations, I've never been in a court situation like this. Being in these situations is very, very difficult, and hopefully the family will agree with the doctors, and that happens in most cases. The family agree, the patient agrees, the doctors agree. These are very rare events, and the hospital will have been very reluctant to have taken this to court. So I think I'd like to try and present it as bad decisions can be made. The gagging order sounded quite harsh when you read about it, but I think the court were really just trying to protect people who are involved in this case. So is it harsh? I think you have to walk in other people's shoes in this situation, and it's really difficult stuff, very difficult. I know the doctors involved with Baby Guard were really had trouble with the whole emotionality of the event.
I completely understand what you're saying in terms of doctors being involved and later on in life, but we're dealing with a fully conscious and sentient young patient. Paul, what do you feel about the machinations of what's going on today and what's happened today and in the case overall?
Well, that's what makes it different to lots of these other cases. The one that Malcolm alluded to there, I think was talking about Alfie Evans, which I know a bit about. I was slightly involved in that one as well. But in this one, you had a conscious patient who was clear about what she wanted. She wanted more treatment. And so in this case, the courts never got this far as to say that it was in her best interest to die, which often they do in these cases. But it was heading that way. And I don't see how that logic, where you have someone who says, even if there's a very, very small chance of her surviving, of getting better, who says, I want to live, I want to try this treatment, I want to try and go on living. If they want to do that, it seems like the same logic as involuntary euthanasia, to be saying, no, you must be stopped from getting what treatment you want.
Dr. Kendrick, what cost is a human life, a life that wants to keep living? What cost would the NHS put on that life?
Well, there's a fraught question, isn't it? The NICE obviously look at treatments and they have to decide what is the cost of 1 year of perfect quality of life with a treatment. And they do make these decisions, and these decisions are made. They're very rarely overtly said a human life is worth £2.1 million or whatever. But obviously you have to balance things. If somebody wants a treatment that costs £150 million that may or may not work, you would clearly say, well, that just cannot be afforded. We can't do this.
That's true.
And that's just a very harsh reality.
But sorry to interrupt you. It seems that there is a price on a human life, the NHS. What limit would you put on the NHS Trust spending money on legal proceedings to end a human life? Paul, how much should the NHS be allowed to spend of taxpayers' money trying to end a human life?
Well, the system is fundamentally broken, isn't it? Because it's pitting families and doctors at odds with each other, because the government and the NHS will never want to say, and I don't know whether it's a motivation of theirs, they won't want to say ever, we want to turn the treatment off because it's costing too much. They never want to say that, and they probably don't think that either. But in this case, they want, the family wanted to raise the money to go somewhere else, to be off the NHS books altogether, and it was heading to a situation where they were completely stopped from doing that. And the transparency order made her completely nameless, made it impossible to realistically fundraise, to actually raise the money to try and go somewhere else, to go to try experimental treatment in North America. So it was a transparency order, most of all in this case, that made it impossible for her to seek that treatment. And that's what I think is most unjust about this one.
Dr. Kendrick, do you have sympathy with the family in the fact that this transparency, this Orwellian transparency order, which is a gagging order, prevented the family from raising funds to give her one last chance at life? And when we look at images of this young woman, we don't see a woman who's given up on life or who looks particularly ill. Should we, as a society, always fight for the primacy of the right to life above all other things?
That's a big question, but I think that my own view on this, and I don't know exactly what the legal details were, that yes, if somebody has got capacity and they're of a certain age and they wish to make a decision to raise money to go and try a treatment elsewhere in the world, then my personal opinion is that they should be allowed to do this, because that is their decision. I think that one of the problems is, of course, sometimes these treatments are held out by people who, well, they're trying to make money, to be frank, on their treatments, and that you can raise false hope. Sometimes you have to come to terms with things, and people desperately searching and costing themselves millions when realistically it's just not going to work. I mean, they can make that decision, obviously. But I think there should be, I think that to an extent, there's two different things here. Should the NHS have said, well, we can't do any more for you? I think the answer was yes.
Well,
should you stop somebody searching for treatment? Well, I think no, but you should be quite straightforward with them and say, realistically, there is no cure for this disease. It is going to be terminal.
Yes.
Somehow or other, we have to come to terms with that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there are an awful lot of people who've made an awful lot of money out of treatments that don't work. Thank you, Dr. Malcolm Kendrick and Paul Huxley from Christian Concern. Right. Tonight, I am asking you, is the NHS fit for purpose? Email me at gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at Laurence Fox or at GBNews. Also, yes, the overlords at the GB News HQ is still insisting on keeping the balance on. It'll sound like this. Isn't it fun? That's why I love my Friday nights. That's what's to tell me is that I have gone too far. Shall we hear it one last time? Isn't it great? Right, well, I'm sure we won't need it for any more than once in the rest of the show. In fact, it will probably come in handy in a moment because we're about to discuss the massive furore around Russell Brand allegations. Do not vanish!
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show, that's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programmes sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Yek Shemesh, welcome back. You are watching and listening to GB News with me, Laurence Fox. Now, video site Rumble has revealed that it was asked by a UK parliamentary committee to cut Russell Brand's income after accusations of rape and sexual assault were made against the high-profile comedian and actor. Brand strongly denies the allegations, but Dame Caroline Dinenage, chair of the Parliament's media committee, told Rumble she was concerned he could profit from his content on the site. Rumble have dismissed this and say they will not join a cancel culture mob. Here to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome Nigel Nelson, the senior political commentator here at GB News, and TV personality and broadcaster Precious Muir. Nigel, is Brand a victim of trial by media here?
No, I don't think he is. And when it comes to what happened with Rumble, they didn't say you must do this. Rumble seemed to have either misread the letter from Caroline Dinenage or don't understand how the UK Parliament works, because obviously Parliament can't ban anything on its own. So what happened there was that Rumble seemed to think Caroline Dinenage was demanding that they demonetise, at the very least, Russell Brand, and that is not what she was saying. She was asking for their policy on how they do it, and the particular bit that's worrying is whether or not he got the video denying the allegations monetised anyway, if he made a profit out of it.
Right. Precious, you've got experience in TV. What do you make of these allegations?
Right, well, I don't actually know Russell Brand at all, so I can't really speak on him, but I do know, obviously, the industry very well. I'm around big dogs all day long. And, you know, the kind of situation that I've been in, for example, I met Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Mansion, and my experience with him was perfectly fine. I had a great experience. I had a lovely time, and any time I worked with them, I was always happy and it was fine. But everybody has a different experience. So obviously the experience that Russell Brand has had with one person is not going to be the same with another. So these allegations, we have to wait and see if they're true or not. That's the purpose of going to judge, to court and everything like that.
We haven't... I think the question probably... the question is, seeing as we haven't got to a judge or even a police interview at this juncture, do you think that possibly this trial by media rather than trial by police investigation, do you think it's a bit hurried?
I think that working for Channel 4 myself, I've done numerous shows on Channel 4, and the reason behind all of those things is the investigation has to process, and I believe that Channel 4 go through a situation of processing those investigations. I haven't worked on the shows that I've done, Open House, for example, and it was just easy going. I was just able to be casted. There is a process. So we have to kind of wait, and I agree, social media has to wait and see the process to see where this goes. But I believe in consent, and working on a show like Open House, where I was amongst very open-minded, free-spirited individuals, the factor is you still have to get consent from everybody there. You can't just take advantage or try to, you know, do something that maybe necessarily the other person's not consenting to. And I think that is the key factor here.
And the trial by media thing, that, I mean, are you suggesting that the Sunday Times and Channel 4 shouldn't have published the investigation they had done? I mean, if you put the allegations out there, you can always argue that someone is being tried by media, but actually they can only ever be tried in a court of law. And what should follow this is actually due process. So in the event the police have the evidence against Russell Brand, that's where he should finally appear. And as far as the actual investigations go, you can't do nowadays you can't do an investigation unless you have some pretty good evidence to start it under under press rules, under the regulator. They demand that you don't go on a fishing expedition. You don't wake up one morning and say, "Oh, let's go get Russell Brand." They had to have something persuasive.
There's a process to it for them to lead to something like this.
That's right.
I mean, as I said, I went on several shows with Channel 4, and I know there is a process. You can't just be put on these things. Things are being investigated. We have to wait and see. But Channel 4 wouldn't just, you know, kind of put out a show there, like you're saying. So investigations must have been done at least a year from what I watched on the documentary. So we just have to kind of wait and see. But what I would say is that, obviously, as a woman in the industry, I've had to navigate myself and have to, you know, I had to be strong in certain circumstances where I feel like I could be put in a position where I'm uncomfortable, you know, and I'm having to deal with very, very influential, very, very strong-minded individuals who can either ruin your career or make it better. You know, so this is the kind of situation that I'm in on a daily basis, and it hasn't stopped. This is the industry still to this day.
Yeah, I was an actor for 22 years, and I could bury most celebrities.
Right.
That are famous.
I mean,
today.
we all have
for their
experiences.
behaviour back in the day.
Right,
I could
exactly.
bury
things that we were okay
national
with
treasures.
Then, back then,
can I get my question out quickly? Are we correct to judge people today in today's very, very heightened, you know, as you talk about, you know, the positive side of it being consent, but in today's very heightened socially aware status, are we capable, and should we be capable, of judging people in this current value system as opposed to the one that existed when Russell Brand was knocking his way about the world, along with every single celeb I knew at the time?
What the blurred line is there, which is a really key point that I would really like to make, is that the general public, overall, the general public think that rape and sexual assault is by a complete stranger, when in fact the statistics have shown that sexual assault and rape has been done by somebody you know. So this is what we need to make sure that the general public understand, that it doesn't have to be this random incident where this random stranger has assaulted that person, but it's also a key factor that it could be somebody you know. So that has to be clear. So it's like, you know, at the end of the day, those kind of situations do happen. Now, we don't know if those are true, but this is what the mindset of society thinks.
I think that's why...
And automatically, when you love someone dearly, they can't comprehend a beautiful celebrity that they idolise could do such a thing.
That's a more complicated issue, but it's absolutely worth raising in terms of context. Final word.
Yeah, just simply that in answer to that direct question, that yes, you're right, that the attitudes were different 10, 15 years ago. Promiscuity was actually more accepted, and Russell Brand's sense of humour was also more acceptable. Whether it should be or not is another matter. Rape was a crime then, and a serious and abhorrent crime, and it's a crime now, and that is what we must focus on. It's the allegations which he denies, and that's why due process must take place.
Yeah, I mean, when I went for my first theatre tour, in the guest book of the place where you'd stay, it would say LD, landlady does. And then underneath that, it would sometimes say LDD, landlady's daughter does. So times have changed.
Times have changed.
Thank you to my guests, Nigel Nelson and Precious Muir. You're watching and listening to GB News. Coming up, Sunak U-turns on net zero. Is school now optional? And are footpaths racist? Of course they are. We've always been racist. And then it's time for Fox and Newshounds. See you shortly. Goodbye. 3 minutes.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Cracking day tomorrow for most parts of the country. Fine, dry and bright after a bit of a chilly start. Sunday will see things turning windier thanks to this area of low pressure that was formerly Hurricane Nigel. Bit of a ridge in the isobars, though. That's the fine weather that's coming tomorrow, but we're not there yet. It's been a showery Friday and still quite a few showers around this evening, but they are fading in most locations. And with the clear skies and the air coming down from the north, it is turning quite chilly. Temperatures down into single digits and actually some pockets of frost likely over rural parts of the north. So a chilly start to Saturday, but for quite a few of us, a bright, fine start tomorrow morning. Plenty of sunshine around. Still the possibility of a few showers, Lincolnshire, Norfolk, especially through the morning, but they should be fading, as should the showers over the Northern Isles. Staying quite breezy here, but elsewhere, light winds, some sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant after that chilly start, 14 to 18 degrees. Now, it is going to turn cloudier in the west, and come the afternoon, rain is going to push into Northern Ireland. That's going to get heavier overnight, and then in these western areas of Wales, Northern Ireland, and parts of Scotland, we are looking at heavy and persistent rain through Sunday that could cause some problems, the potential for some flooding. It turns windy everywhere, although many central and eastern areas will stay dry and bright. That wind coming from the south, so bringing milder air, so temperatures more widely on Sunday into the high teens or low 20s.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan Tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Great success! You are watching and listening to GB News with me, Laurence Fox. Some of your thoughts from earlier. Nigel has emailed in with some kind words. Thank you, Laurence, for your sincere and heartfelt monologue about Sidishka. This is disgraceful treatment of her and her family. It needs to be brought out into the open and discussed. Thank you very much. Thorani reflects on our healthcare system. My condolences to Sidishka's family. For decades, our healthcare systems in the Western world was thought to be great, but in fact, there were many that were wronged and slipped through the system. Oh, feeling rather good about myself. Our last email is from Gary. Laurence, we get that you feel for the family and the girl, but your monologue was way over the top. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Gary, I'm very offended. Can someone get Gary's number? Get him cancelled, wherever he is. Great success. Right, now, it's time for Fox and the Newshounds panel, where we go through some of the biggest stories of the week. I'm joined by behavioural observationist Jenny Trent Hughes, ladies and gentlemen, and Lewis Blackpool, evil right-winger, from Great News. Right, first up tonight, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been criticised this week for apparently watering down the government's net zero policies. Sunak has postponed a ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2030 to 2035. Hallelujah! And says some households will be exempt from a ban on oil and gas boilers. The Prime Minister says that the UK can still meet its net zero target. Sorry. No, net zero. Brilliant idea. But the Climate Change Committee says the revised policies represent a backward step to Sadiq Khan's pocket. Sorry. Jenny, who is right? Jenny, who is right? Prime Minister or the Climate Change Committee?
Well, it's interesting. I agree with the Prime Minister's action. I believe in the delaying because I don't think any of what they're saying makes a huge amount of sense. And I think that what's happening is that we can't solve this problem. Like almost every problem that we ever discuss, we can't solve it because people are just trying to appease their constituency. So even if they're not politicians, even if they're climate change people, they feel that they're trying to make a difference, but I don't think it's clear. I don't think their aims are clear.
Why are you being so rational and reasonable again?
Because...
Can you just stop it and be a rabid, wokist left-winger like I expected, Lewis? Be evil.
I will be evil. I think the delay is pointless. I don't think there is such thing as opposition in this government, personally. I think the delay is a complete ruse, and I believe anyone celebrating it on Twitter is kidding themselves. really.
OK, that's optimistic. So we're all in agreement that we're saying it's unachievable by 2030.
All I want is for them to fix the public transport system. And I think that if they would focus their time, attention and money on fixing the public transport system, then we wouldn't need all these other unachievable targets.
But which bit of the public transport system do you not like? Is not working?
Well, where I live, it doesn't even exist. And that's really the problem. No, I live
Do you live in the sticks?
Yes, I do.
Is it near Watford?
No.
Sorry?
No, I live in Warwickshire.
Warwickshire?
Very, yeah.
And there's nothing, no buses. Yeah, I had it when I lived in the countryside. There was
For me to drive from my boat to Rugby takes me 28 minutes to drive. I tried it by bus, it took me 4.5 hours.
Well, that's good. Thanks. That's positive and uplifting. Get on the bus in Warwickshire, ladies and gentlemen. That's the rule. Now, listen. This is an important one. Are parents starting to see sending their children to school as an optional extra? Well, the government made it an optional extra, didn't they, when they locked us down for 3 years? The absolute beep, 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 beeps. The consultancy Public First has produced a report which says there has been a seismic shift in parental attitudes to their children's attendance in school. Like there's a seismic shift in the desire of teachers to attend school, which they link to the lockdowns during the COVID pandemic, which was really bad and everyone's forgotten about, doesn't want to talk about it anymore. The report says that parents think it has become socially acceptable to have holidays during the term time. Yippee, cheaper. And the kids don't need full-time schooling if they're anxious. Lewis, should school be optional for children? You fascist.
Yeah. The thing is with this is it's a rippling effect from the lockdowns, from the shambolic governmental policy that's been put through.
Don't criticise government over lockdown.
Oh,
not on my show.
Am I not allowed?
Not on my show.
No? Oh.
They did great. It was brilliant. 3 years, 400 billion quid. Genius.
The problem is we've created this kind of, I want to call it like a welfare culture almost, where people are almost encouraged to do things at home. The work from home, we're looking at a possible UBI, universal basic income, that can really wrap around with this type of, push. And I don't like the direction that we're going in, personally. So, equally said, the media has created this fear for children. I want to say that, the mainstream media, where parents are now saying that their kids are anxious to even go to school. I think that's disgraceful. And I point the finger to the fear-mongering from the media, the abysmal policy from the government, and I think we're only scratching the surface of the damage done from the last 3 years.
Jenny, I have a theory. My theory
That's surprising.
Are you trying to tell me that I'm thick?
Not at all.
OK, thank God, because I'm not. I'm really clever. But anyway, I've got a theory, which is the wokey lot have squeezed the trans issue dry. There's nothing we can do with the trans issue. What have I done wrong?
Is that
shout in my ear or something.
Oh, is that the naughty buzzer?
That's my naughty buzzer.
I'm surprised I didn't get that.
But can I just do... You didn't get... Look, so they've milked the trans thing dry, forgive the pun, and now they're going to move on to mental health. Are we over-coddling our children, and should we just send them up chimneys?
OK, first of all, children need to go to school. I don't want to hear any other discussion, children going to school at home, whatever. That is an absolute nonsense. But what I found really interesting is some information came out this week. They surveyed a couple of thousand kids, and guess what? 2/3 of them are very happy. They're not upset about COVID at all, and they're looking forward to a rosy future. That made me feel so good, because I think that you have parents and the media banging on about our children are suffering, all our children are suffering, they're really sad because of COVID, and then they went and actually asked the kids, and the kids said, no, we're fine.
There's more good news as well, that it's a rise in homeschooling as well, which is a very good thing.
Yeah, because
I don't like that homeschooling.
Well, hang on.
No.
Hang on a minute.
It's great.
Don't punch each other. I spoke to some educators yesterday, and they teach white privilege, gender ideology, pronouns, everything. I'm just like, done. Someone is saying something in my ear. Are we not allowed to talk about racist paths? No! No! We can't talk about racist paths. We can. Still to come on the show, my panellist Lewis Blackpool, evil, posted an online safety bill to ChatGPT and asked questions about whether the bill would harm freedom of speech. I'll tell you what he found out. Don't go away. Mwah.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, Rishi Sunak's U-turn on net zero will be his Falklands moment and could win him the next election. In My Take at 10, BBC presenter Chris Packham supports breaking the law to save the planet. My response: and should King Charles stay out of the climate debate? Plus my Mark Meets guest, newsreading legend Nicholas Owen. We're live from 9.
Welcome back to the show. A controversial new law was passed this week designed to make social media firms more responsible for people's safety when using their platforms. Yeah, right. The Online Safety Bill, yeah, right, has been warmly welcomed by many charities for making the internet safer, but has also attracted criticism from bad people, with some commentators saying it's an assault on free speech, bad, and will allow tech firms to determine what is said online. My panel are still here. Lewis and Jenny. Right, Lewis.
Yes.
You evil fascist. You conducted an experiment this week regarding the Online Safety Bill. Tell us about it quickly, please,
yes.
So I can ask Jenny what the real truth is.
So I don't have time to look through government legislation that's over 309,000 words. That's just, yeah, it's
lazy,
too long.
Lazy.
Very lazy. So I thought, well, why not I utilise AI by putting it through ChatGPT.
Copy and pasted.
Copy and pasted. It has a character limit of 2,078 characters, so it took me 3 hours.
You copy and paste.
Yeah. And then I fed it the bill and then proceeded to ask it questions and then document it. Things like, what does the bill define as hate speech? What power does it give to Ofcom? We can talk a little bit about that.
Just tell me, because I asked ChatGPT to write me a film with Laurence Fox as James Bond in the style of The Bourne Identity, and it was pretty good.
OK.
It's coming to you later when you uncancel me. Lewis, findings.
Findings. It moves Ofcom from not only the broadcaster realm, but to the internet. And you could see overzealous censoring. And what ChatGPT is telling me is it infringes 26 sections of the bill potentially could infringe freedom of speech and expression. So I've documented it all. I've posted it on my YouTube channel under my name.
Where can you find your YouTube channel?
Just my name, Lewis Brackpool, and you can find it's the top video about asking ChatGPT to dismantle the bill. And the findings are shocking, and I think we're in for a really worrying
period of time.
Yeah.
Watch that, because that's worth. Jenny, I've got a theory that the online safety bill is already taking place, because when you Google me, it's all mean.
I know. But you see, I have two problems. There's two things that I really am ranting about now, 2.5. I'm ranting about how I feel Russell Brand is being treated. That's the half. My full-time rant is Barbie, and then my other full-time rant is ChatGPT. I have been given a brain, and I've been given a brain for a reason. We've all been given brains. And I think that we don't use our brains enough as it is. And I think that starting to rely too much on things like ChatGPT means we're not using our brains. However, I find his experiment really interesting.
Thank you.
Well, it's obviously that you are discriminating against AI, and
yep.
I will report you to Ofcom. Listen, the most important story of the evening, for me, something that's really deeply personal to my heart, are footpaths. I've noticed an increase in white supremacy in footpaths. A study has found that whiter areas have 144% more local footpaths in England and Wales than in ethnically diverse communities. And more affluent areas have 80% more local paths, so I'm spitting now, which are considered to be within a 10-minute walk of their area. The more serious concern is that communities who get the most from the health benefits linked to footpaths are denied easy access to them. Now, how racist are the footpaths? Jenny?
Well, I've walked all over Wiltshire, I walk all over Warwickshire, I walk all over wherever I can, and I have yet to see a sign saying no brown people allowed to walk here.
We'll get those fitted in. Lewis, are footpaths racist? Should they be more racist?
Was this The Guardian that published this by any chance?
Don't be like that. Are footpaths racist? It's a simple yes or no, because I've got to go to Fox on the spot.
Very.
Very. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I ask you to put me on the spot with your questions. Fox on the spot. Barry is not very happy with me. Oh, God. He asks, why does Laurence Fox hate freedom of speech so much? He blocks anyone on Twitter who challenges populist agenda. OK, Barry, here's my rules on blocking people on Twitter. You slag off my children or threaten to kill me, you're blocked. You post a meme of my ex-wife singing, going, Billy's got the kids, you're blocked. Right, Susan has a much more significant question. If you could only eat pizza or pasta for the rest of your life, which one would you choose? It would have to be pasta. Right, Katie has another big issue for us to tackle. Would you rather be attacked by a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? Jenny?
I spent yesterday morning brushing duck poop off my pontoon.
I feel for you, Lewis.
It's got to be the 100 ducks.
100 ducks?
Yeah, it's got.
You're a coward.
Yeah,
you're not an Englishman.
Yeah, well,
you're a coward.
It's funny watching it. It's like a comedy skit. It's like Laurel and Hardy or something.
I want to be attacked by a horse-sized duck.
I know where there's some.
Jenny and I are going out after this. It's pretty obvious to everyone that the chemistry is there. Now listen, I love you. Now listen, thank you for everyone sending in your questions. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you to my panel and my guests and to my wonderful viewers at home. Up next is a very sexy man called Mark Dolan. I fancy you. Mark, what have you got for us?
Well, you can have my body if you like, Laurence. Listen, what a great show. We pick up the tab at 9 o'clock. A busy show. Given that he's standing down from his media empire, we'll be asking Has Rupert Murdoch been good for Britain? Plus, last weekend, we called it. Rishi Sunak has done a net zero U-turn. Could it win him the next election? Keir Starmer definitely looking over his shoulder. Plus, BBC presenter Chris Packham thinks we should break the law to save the planet. These people live on another planet. A really busy show. 2 hours to come. It's Mark Dolan tonight, plus your emails, mark@gbnews.com. Don't go anywhere.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Cracking day tomorrow for most parts of the country. Fine, dry and bright after a bit of a chilly start. Sunday will see things turning windier thanks to this area of low pressure that was formerly Hurricane Nigel. Bit of a ridge in the isobars though, that's the fine weather that's coming tomorrow, but we're not there yet. It's been a showery Friday and still quite a few showers around this evening, but they are fading in most locations. And with the clear skies and the air coming down from the north, it is turning quite chilly. Temperatures down into single digits and actually some pockets of frost likely over rural parts of the north. So a chilly start to Saturday, but for quite a few of us, a bright, fine start tomorrow morning. Plenty of sunshine around. Still the possibility of a few showers, Lincolnshire, Norfolk, especially through the morning, but they should be fading, as should the showers over the Northern Isles. Staying quite breezy here, but elsewhere, light winds, some sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant after that chilly start, 14 to 18 degrees. Now, it is going to turn cloudier in the west, and come the afternoon, rain is going to push into Northern Ireland. That's going to get heavier overnight, and then in these western areas of Wales, Northern Ireland, and parts of Scotland, we are looking at heavy and persistent rain through Sunday that could cause some problems, the potential for some flooding. It turns windy everywhere, although many central and eastern areas will stay dry and bright. That wind coming from the south, so bringing milder air, so temperatures more widely on Sunday into the high teens or low 20s.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice.